When leaders announce shipping rate hikes, the headline rarely tells you who designed the incentive or what option still looks rational on each side. The spike in Shanghai to Los Angeles container rates by 118% from a year ago is not bad luck or simple supply chain friction. It is a calculated leverage point in great power competition. Maritime transport moves over 80% of global trade volume and 79% by value. When this backbone is weaponized, it forces the United States to pay a premium for its own resilience while testing Washington's tolerance for economic pain. Today, we read this move as strategy, not as a morality play or an isolated economic event. The first thing to understand is that what you are seeing in your grocery bill and shipping costs is not a failure of logistics, but the result of a deliberate shift in global incentives. For decades, the post-Cold War era prioritized efficiency above all else, building supply chains designed for low-cost manufacturing across borders under what was called the Washington Consensus. That model assumed that trade would remain neutral ground where transparency and mutual benefit drove behavior. But as geopolitical stances hardened and nations began to view their own supply lines through a security lens rather than just an economic one, efficiency became secondary to resilience. The data from major think tanks now confirms that this era is ending. We are witnessing a transition where reliability has become more valuable than the lowest cost. This shift explains why container rates have surged so dramatically without the traditional causes of weather delays or port congestion dominating the narrative. The current surge coincides with a strategic pivot toward using maritime routes as pressure valves in non-military conflicts. While piracy incidents have fallen to historic lows, dropping to just 79 reported cases globally between January and September 2024, the lowest number since 1994, a new threat profile has emerged. Active conflict zones like the Red Sea and Black Sea are now disrupting trade flows without direct naval combat between major powers. Houthi attacks, backed by Iranian technology, have forced massive rerouting around Africa, tripling insurance costs from a typical 0.6% to as high as 2% in contested regions. This demonstrates how non-state actors can be leveraged or tolerated to disrupt global commerce as a strategic tool without firing a single shot at the U.S. Navy. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The mechanism of leverage here is precise and painful for the American consumer. When shipping operators announce suspensions, such as the 13 major carriers that halted services between December 15th and 19th in response to regional instability, they are not merely reacting to bad weather. They are responding to a risk environment where war risk premiums have tripled. These costs do not vanish. They translate directly into the price of every container moving from China to Los Angeles or New York. The United States remains structurally dependent on this system because it joined the global trade framework in 2001, creating deep integration that makes decoupling a slow and expensive process. As long as manufacturing is concentrated within one geopolitical bloc, Beijing retains the ability to throttle flow or raise costs strategically, effectively holding parts of the U.S. economy hostage without crossing into kinetic warfare. The link between these shipping rate spikes and inflation becomes clear when you look at who ultimately bears the cost. Economic statecraft here is not just about moving goods, it is about pricing power. Disruptions in critical corridors force global markets to absorb higher war risk premiums, which then feed directly into consumer inflation rates that the U.S. must bear as a cost of doing business with a rival superpower. The 11.8% increase on Shanghai to Los Angeles routes and the 83% jump for New York are not random fluctuations in market dynamics. They represent the price tag on a power struggle where trade routes have become strategic front lines. States do not act out of malice but from incentives, and China's manufacturing dominance creates a structural vulnerability for the West that Beijing can exploit by controlling the flow and cost of containers to extract political concessions or simply test American resolve. This reality forces a difficult calculation on Washington regarding its own resilience. The era where governments could rely on shared international governance structures without question is over. Aggressive stances from revisionist powers and active conflicts are forcing policymakers to reevaluate reliance on distant manufacturing hubs, but the transition takes time. Until supply chains can be rewired for true independence or diversified away from high-risk corridors, shipping rates will remain volatile as a primary instrument of pressure. The United States must decide whether it is willing to absorb these inflationary costs indefinitely while restructuring its own industrial base, or if there are limits to how much economic pain the public will tolerate before political constraints force a different approach. The takeaway for any curious observer watching world events unfold is that this volatility is not temporary noise, but a structural feature of modern competition. The 13 shipping suspensions and the tripling of insurance premiums show us exactly where the pressure points are located in real time. As long as global trade relies on these specific choke points, every container becomes a direct revenue stream for war risk premiums that feed into the broader economy. This is why inflation feels so persistent. It is not just about supply chains breaking down, but about a fundamental reconfiguration of how power and wealth flow across oceans in an age where peace cannot be assumed to be the default state of commerce. The stakes are defined by this new dependency, forcing the U.S. to confront the cost of its own integration with Chinese manufacturing dominance. The numbers tell us that 80% of global trade volume still moves by sea, and when this backbone is disrupted, it is a geopolitical event with immediate domestic consequences. Understanding these incentives helps viewers see inflation not as an isolated economic problem, but as the direct cost of living in a world where trade routes are strategic front lines, and every shipping rate hike signals a shift in the balance of power. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.